Game week 23 final decisions. The game week 23 deadline is less than 24 hours away, and we've had some big updates from the press conferences on Friday on players like Erling Haaland, on players like Darwin Núñez, Elise, Eze, that we are all considering transferring into our teams this week and maybe putting the captaincy armband on as well. So today I'm going to take you through that. We'll have a look at an update on my team and we'll answer some of the hot topics going into the game week 23 deadline. What is up everyone, FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 1,000 likes on the video is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here. We are so close to 94k subscribers. To start off, we're going to have a look at Manchester City, and we had a press conference today from Pep Guardiola where, to start off with Kevin De Bruyne, who has been in and out of the Manchester City team. Of course, he started midweek and looked amazing. He came into his press conference and was asked about the availability of his players, and the first thing he said was, everyone is fit, everyone is ready. So that does imply for me that Kevin De Bruyne will probably start again away at Brentford, given there is a nice turnaround. It is not until Monday night. And then after that Monday night game, they do not play again until Saturday morning. So there is a reasonable amount of gaps between the Manchester City games. So I do think Kevin De Bruyne will start again for Manchester City based on what we've heard. But it wasn't anything crazily new in the press conference. We thought that was all he was going to get on Erling Haaland. They did ask a few follow-up questions further on in the press conference where he was asked if he was ready to play and ready to start, and he replied, yup, and then had a little bit of a pause and then said, everyone is ready. But just the way he said it, watching the press conference, I personally think that Erling Haaland is going to be able to start this Brentford game. Now, it is a big call. De Bruyne spent 2 matches on the bench before he came back into the starting lineup. Haaland has only been benched for 1 so far, so could we see a similar trend with Haaland on the bench for Brentford and then ready to start at home to Everton in game week 24? It is a bit of a decision we need to make. However, De Bruyne was a muscle injury, whereas Haaland was only a bone problem. In theory, when bone problems they recovered and are unlikely to have a setback compared to a 6-month-long muscle injury, which is what Kevin De Bruyne had. We'll get to my team and what I plan on doing in game week 23 and whether I plan on buying Haaland or not. But I do think that he should start. Now, I don't think he will get 90 minutes. He also mentioned that they are a very physical side, Brentford, and that he might need height. He might need some more physical presence on the pitch. They're very good from throw-ins and corners, which Haaland suits much, much better than Julian Alvarez. So it's not massive. We don't have any leaks. It's not set in stone, and I don't think he's going to play 90 minutes, but I do think Erling Haaland is going to start, in my opinion. Now, moving into a few bits of injury updates. To start at Newcastle, Isaac and Wilson are both flagged. It looks like Wilson will not be available for the weekend. Isaac, it was feared that he'd be out for a while, but it does sound like he might be in contention to play the game at the weekend at home to Luton. However, with the risk of aggregating an injury, I don't think Isaac will start. He might be in the squad and there will be a late check done. It does mean that Anthony Gordon may end up playing up front. He may even be on penalties as well. Without Wilson or Isaac, we don't really know who is going to be the penalty taker of Newcastle, but either way, it does cement Gordon in that Newcastle team, which he was going to be in anyway, as a very good pick. Next up is Darwin Núñez, which we didn't realise was going to be a doubt until we had the Liverpool press conference this morning. Klopp said that Darwin left the game on Wednesday in a protective boot after someone had trod on his foot early in the game. He was going to see how he came through the training later today on Friday, which we haven't had any training photos yet, and we're going to see how they get on Saturday. Whether he's going to start or not, we aren't necessarily sure, but it is such a massive game that I do think if there's any possibility for Darwin being available, I do think he'll probably make the squad at least. And the final one is Mo Salah. Do we think Salah is going to be available for 24 in particular? Not this week. Now, there was no mention of Salah in the press conference for Liverpool today, not even a hint of it. So we don't really have an update. The only thing we've seen is pictures and videos of him running outside in both trainers and then I think in boots as well. Implies I don't think he's going to be starting this Arsenal game. He's not going to be in the squad for game week 23. There is still a chance that he's back for game week 24, but we don't have any concrete information on that yet. So right now, I would still say game week 25 is the predicted return for him, which at time of recording is still not a double yet for Liverpool, which is a bit of a concern for those of us invested in them. A few more bits of injury news. The first up at Crystal Palace, looking at both Eze and Elise, who came off during the week. It was confirmed that Elise was basically taken off as a precaution, and Hodgson said he's presuming that Elise is fine and will be okay. Eze, on the other hand, was not as good. He felt a bit of tension in his hamstring and was going to go for a scan on Friday afternoon ahead of the game on Saturday. Now, for me, a player going for a scan is not great. You don't go for a scan to see if there's an injury or not. You tend to go for a scan to see how bad an injury is. So I have Eze in my team, and I'm not expecting him to start for Crystal Palace on Saturday. So if you are looking for a Palace midfielder, I would buy Elise. I have said I probably prefer him as an option anyway. Next up is Brighton. First of all is João Pedro. João Pedro did go off with a knock. He is going to have a late fitness test on Friday, so we don't know. It's going to be touch and go. I don't necessarily think he's going to start. Is he going to want to throw him into that game when he is so important to Brighton and potentially risk it? Maybe not, but he is going to have a late fitness test. And the final one is Estupiñán. People were worried about why he was taken off at half-time. Apparently, he looked really tired after the Sheffield United game a few weeks ago, and then he didn't start the game very well, and he was taken off at half-time. There was no mention of him in the injury list, so we do expect Estupiñán to be back available for Brighton at home to Crystal Palace, which actually is a very big game for both clubs. They are rivals because of where they're located in the country for some reason, but it is a very big game for them, so I do think Estupiñán will be fine for it. Now, just to look across all the positions finally, and if you are looking at players to buy at the moment, who should I go with? We won't spend massively long on goalkeepers, but Leno is my number one pick. He does cover all of the blank game weeks for you, and he's been pretty good recently. Ederson is next because of the double. Dubravka is nice and cheap, and the Newcastle fixtures coming up are great. Flecken, of course, covers all the blanks and has a double, and then Areola is a cheap option. Into defence, Trippier is one, but not many of us can get to him at the moment because of his price. So if you can't, then it is Sven Botman or it is Dan Burn. They're very equal, 4.5 and 4.4 million apiece. I do like them as defensive picks at the moment. Estupiñán is next. I still fancy him over Van Heck. I still think the fixtures are there. Yes, they've had a couple of off games, but I do think they are still worth looking at if you need defenders. Van Heck, the cheap option. There's not actually massively between them because of Estupiñán's positioning. So Van Heck's not the worst pick at all if you can't afford Estupiñán. And then it is Ezri Konsa. The Aston Villa fixtures are not bad. He's very nailed, and there's an okay chance that Chelsea beat them in the Cup, which would give you a fixture in game week 29. Moving into midfield, Kevin De Bruyne is number one. I feel like he is going to start playing every single week at the moment, and I am very scared not owning him, and I am considering ways to get him into my team as well. So he is number one. Gordon, with the fixtures being cheap, is number two. Foden, I still like. If you can't afford De Bruyne, do not be put off by Phil Foden. I still like him. A few questions recently about the minutes for them. Maybe I've overestimated the minutes for Foden recently and underestimated the minutes for De Bruyne. But I wouldn't ever say De Bruyne has better minutes. Maybe they're level and maybe they're equal now. But that does mean there is a price difference. Now, De Bruyne is more explosive. He's maybe a slightly more attacking asset when he starts. And when he starts, Foden's positioning is not great. But don't be put off buying Foden if you cannot buy De Bruyne. The minutes should still be good. Maybe not quite as good as they were before De Bruyne and Haaland came back. Next up is Elise. Of course, with Eze out, I would go Elise. He should be on all penalties and set pieces with Eze out. He's maybe not as good an asset from open play if Eze is out though, but I don't mind him at 5.9. And Richarlison stays at number 5. He could be higher up, he could be lower down depending on what it does for your team in the blank in game week 26. Of course, it's the week that Spurs don't have a fixture because Chelsea play in the Carabao Cup final. Up front, to be honest, I struggled for more than 2 in this list. Haaland 1, Tony 2. I've actually put Haaland 3. 21 points in the last 2 games, and the United fixtures coming up look really nice, including West Ham at home this week. Could be a good differential. Next up is Solanke again. He's great for this week, but a lot of us are actually considering selling him in a few weeks, which is why I wouldn't really be buying anyone this week, which isn't Haaland or Tony, or maybe Højlund if you fancy a differential. And then the cheap option is Cunha. Wolves just love to score goals at the moment. Neto and Cunha together. Hwang Hee-chan will be back at some point. It might not be until game week 25, 26 now because of South Korea doing well in the Asia Cup, but he's 5.8 and Wolves are performing very, very well. Now, going into the top questions of the week, the first one, would I take a -4 to buy Erling Haaland? Now, if you can buy Erling Haaland for free, I do think it is a reasonable thing to do. I've almost said no-brainer, but maybe not depending on who your forwards are. But I do think for most forwards in the game, I would sell for Erling Haaland this week because I do think he's going to start away at Brentford. However, there will be some of you thinking, I don't have the money to do it. I need to take a -4 to buy him. Now, would I do that? There are a few situations that I would do it. I would not do it if it involves selling Solanke, Toney, Watkins, or probably Alvarez as well. I'm not sure I'd sell any of those four to go and buy Haaland for a hit. Now, if the other transfer is Salah down to a midfielder, for example, that you really like, that think will do well this week, then maybe it's slightly more beneficial because the two transfers you make are worth it. But it is away at Brentford. It's not the most straightforward game. He's unlikely to get 90 minutes as well. So I would be cautious of taking -4s to buy Haaland this week. However, he will be massively owned. He will be massively captained. And there is a fear factor element to try and consider here. So if you own Solanke, Toney or Watkins, I'm pretty certain I would not sell any of those three for a hit to buy Haaland this week. Now, in terms of captaincy, Haaland is my number one captaincy choice this week, followed by Kevin De Bruyne, just because those two playing together I think are great. The next two are Solanke and Ollie Watkins. If you don't go Haaland, I like them. If you don't have Haaland and De Bruyne, Solanke at home to Forest. He scored a hat-trick against them last time. It was against 10 men, but he is on penalties. He did score against West Ham. I do think he's an all right captaincy option, and then it is Watkins as well. Number 5 is actually Trippier. His data's been pretty good, and now they play at home to Luton. I think that could be a bit of a differential shout this week. And the final question is, Harry, will Liverpool double in game week 25? Where is this announcement? We still don't have the announcement at time of recording that Liverpool are going to get a double in game week 25. What are the Premier League doing not announcing this fixture? It is getting to less than 3 weeks now until that fixture should be played. As I said, there are a few hints. Klopp said in his press conference that they play every 3 days after the Burnley fixture, which isn't the case unless that fixture goes in, which could be, Klopp just not knowing exactly how many fixtures they've got, which is very possible. Don't necessarily read into that 100%. There are also no stadium tours to Liverpool on the day that that fixture is meant to go in, but they say they want to give 4 weeks notice. And there was no reason that this fixture couldn't be announced on Monday or Tuesday or maybe even Wednesday this week. So the chance of it happening is dropping. Now, after this video comes out, you might get it. Sometimes they announce stuff at 6 o'clock on Friday evenings. They just do for some random reason. So it is still possible. If it doesn't happen between now and the Game Week 23 deadline, it will drop very quickly. It will drop below 50% in my eyes if it doesn't happen before the deadline. And when it doesn't happen very early next week, the chance will drop even further. Now, briefly to look at a wildcard draft if you are playing one this week, to go back to my chip strategy video if you haven't watched that. If you're wildcarding now, you need to play your free hit in game week 29 because you cannot worry about stressing about a massive blank if you've already played your wildcard. Dubravka, Areola in goal. We're going Trent, Estupiñán, Gabriel with Sven Botman, given the Newcastle fixtures coming up, as our defender. If you have the money in the bank, Botman up to Trippier could be a fantastic differential, as I spoke about in my transfer targets video earlier in the week, with Van Heck being the cheap option in there. I do still think Brighton are okay defensively. Their fixtures are really nice going forward as well. De Bruyne is in there along with Erling Haaland and Phil Foden. It is a Manchester City triple up in attack. Because we're not certain on when Salah is coming back, that is fine. If you need Salah back and you really wanted him, and let's say they got the double, you could sell De Bruyne to him. But I don't love their defenders with everyone being back fit, basically. Akanji is there, Stones is there, Ake is playing well, Rico Lewis playing well. Of course, you've got Kyle Walker, you've got Ruben Diaz. I just wouldn't own their defenders if I was on wildcard now. So I'm going De Bruyne, Haaland, Foden, set up for their double. And of course, they play in the blank in game week 26. Gordon, Palmer and Richarlison. This team actually only leaves you with 3 players blanking in game week 26 in Palmer, Richarlison and Trent. So you're already well set up for the blank game week. Now, if there was a Liverpool double announced, you could do Foden to Diego Jota, for example. You could do Solanke up to Darwin or something like that in your forward line. There is money in this draft. Spare, I had about 2.5 million. So even if your team value is low, you should be able to afford it. Up front, it is Haaland back in here. It is Ivan Toney, who is one of my favourite forwards at the moment. And then it is Dominic Solanke as well. And finally, looking at my team for the weekend. So with the news on Erling Haaland, I do plan on doing the one transfer that I spoke about in my team selection video this morning of Alvarez up to Erling Haaland. And I do plan on putting the captaincy armband on him, partly because I don't necessarily trust the captaincy armband on someone else. I'm pretty certain that I'll buy him. About 75-80% that I'll buy him, and maybe about 60% that he'll then get the captaincy armband, just because Brentford away is not the easiest, and there is of course the doubt that he doesn't start the game. But or he doesn't play 60, 70 minutes. That is the other doubt in my mind. But I'm pretty sure that I will buy him. If I don't captain him, where would it go? Probably Solanke or Watkins, outside chance of Palmer. But Solanke or Watkins would probably be the ones that I would look at for captaincy if it doesn't end up on Erling Haaland. Eze, of course, being yellow flagged, made my benching headache a little bit easier this week. So I plan on benching Eze unless we get confirmation that he's going to start pre-deadline. But given it's 3 o'clock and given we never have Palace early team news, I don't think that's going to be the case. So this is how we're going to plan to set up 3-4-3. Alvarez likely to leave with Erling Haaland coming in. He is predicted to rise in price today on Friday. Will I make that transfer tonight or will I wait for tomorrow? 0.1 doesn't massively impact me at the moment, so I'm not forced into doing it. But of course, every 0.1 at some point in the season might be useful. I just think, of course, there is the chance that going into the deadline, we get news on something else here and there. So I currently plan on waiting, but I don't think it's impossible that I decide to move tonight. So that is all from me. Leave any questions you have in the comment section down below. We will, of course, be back with the Game Week 23 deadline stream 2 hours before the FPL deadline, where you can either leave your comments on this video or you can tune into that, get your comments and questions answered live. Thank you all so much for watching. 1,000 likes on the video is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here, and we'll be back again very soon.